to the 19th.
Today on the show, we have Shandra McDonald. She's a professor of film at Clayton State University. Shandra, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background getting into the digital media world and especially writing, which is one of your fortes.
Okay. Well, I would say that my background in writing starts back, I would say college, but I think I'd say even before that. I was a serious Barbie player. I was one of those kids, you didn't have to play with me. You didn't have to come over. Would prefer if you didn't because I had a serious amount of audition process for you being able to be eligible to be in my Barbie circle. And so storytelling has always been a part of my life. And then from there, a few years later, decided that I wanted to go into journalism. And that was Howard University, where I received a BA degree in journalism. Had the pleasure of interning at some wonderful places from, let's see, Family Circle magazine was a job, but I interned in New York at Essence magazine, and then I also wrote for the school newspaper. It was a fashion reporter for the school newspaper. And then I also did an internship in the feature division at a newspaper in Fort Lauderdale called the Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel. So fast forward, I'm at Family Circle magazine and I'm on a shoot one day, and this photographer looks over at me and she says, are you sure you're not a filmmaker? And I'm like, a film what? And so in my head, I thought, let me explore this. Explored it through a couple classes, decided to go back to Howard, apply for my MFA degree. Got into film school. While I was in film school, also became a producer for the Discovery Channel, and that's what started the interest in the path for filmmaking. And since the time of going to Howard, I did an award that I wrote. I specifically wrote this thesis film, and it took me to Los Angeles. And writing has just been such a part of my life. I mean, I tell my students all the time. I say, you can write any medium, or you can direct or produce or be a part of any medium if you know the basis of story. And over the years, 20 plus years of being in this industry, it has been the anchor through which I have been able to navigate in production, development, and on set, and even in editing.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point there that there are certain aspects of creative writing that translate across a wide spectrum of
Yes.
media, right?
Hmm.
But so
Hmm.
what are some of the differences between like writing, for like a novel, for something someone's going to read, for writing for a script, something that is going to be, produced by whether it's actors or just, talent of some kind. What
Yeah.
are some of the major differences there?
Well, as a professor who teaches screenwriting and also as a person who consults and does rewrites for screenplays professionally, I would say the biggest difference between novels and scripts is novels are internal and scripts are visual. When people are reading a screenplay to assess how it'll be on the big picture, or when you're sitting down watching a film that was originally formulated with the foundation of a script, it's about what you can see. I find that a lot of times folks who write novels, they have this really wonderful, flavorful language related to describing emotions that come across on the page visually. But screenwriting is a technical pursuit. It's a technical application. At the point where you're writing, you have to write things that people can see, and there's so many departments who are involved in that script, as far as planning, projecting, actors who are internalizing and trying to bring to life. But say, for example, someone who was a novelist writes something to say, Lisa walks in the room, sits down at the table, and determined in her head to know should she go on this path or that path as her parents have asked her, encouraged her. That would not work well in a film. It would need to be more visual, okay? Because it's just about what I see. So a screenplay must be along the lines of Lisa walks in the room, sits down, lays her head on the table, looks across to her mom. Mom, what should I do in my life? It cannot be internal into their head. They have to be able. It has to be tangible things that can be acted, can be projected, can be expressed verbally. And it's not to say that it's all about everything, all the talking, but those quiet moments that are visual as well still have to have meaning.
So what are some of the best practices like when you're either working with beginner students or maybe even like the last thing that you let your students know when the semester's over, like if you're going to remember anything from this class, like remember these five things or whatever it is. What are in your experience, like what are those best practices that students can focus on?
Well, in our early screenwriting class, it's about character, the evolution of character. I always tell my students, once again, show, don't tell. Try not to tell this humongous story. My students write very short scripts. They write 5-page scripts for the very first project. And the first assignment is a fairy tale script. And for reasons of that, I actually inherited that project from a colleague. It enforces them to be folkloric, to use mythology in their writing, which is the essence of just inspiration and no limitations and imagination. And that medium with the idea of showing versus telling can be a little challenging for young people. But I want them to give birth to those imaginations in a short amount of time, thinking about character, thinking about plot. There's a wonderful adage that comes from, the hero's journey that people like Francis Ford Coppola use for Star Wars, and so many filmmakers have used in their films and their processes. I try to get them to understand most movies, Hollywood films, not to say that I don't want them to do different types of films, but most films have a pretty consistent structure. They're just different stories in a similar vessel. Now, you can tell a story differently in a non-episodic way, like a Tarantino or one of those individuals, but there's different expectations that audiences have when they watch your film. But keeping in mind some of the fundamental, basic, cohesive things that make a script, I really try to have them do that, and also just formatting. I have friends who are agents in Los Angeles who say that they will throw screenplays in the garbage if it's not formatted properly. Students, they have a hard time understanding this and really accepting it, but it's just that important for it to look a certain way, to sound a certain way, and to move people a certain way.
That's really good. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, and I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. Thanks for listening. You can listen to more episodes and find resources for teaching podcasting at podcastpedagogy.com. You can email the show at info@podcastpedagogy.com.